All right, let's dive into a really fascinating and pretty dense philosophical parable. Now, this isn't just some story. Think of it as an allegory for a war being fought for the very fabric of the soul. It's this incredible battle between crushing conformity, absolute soul sucking emptiness, and something else, a radical new kind of freedom. And this one line from a character we'll meet called the Pale Cynic just sets the tone perfectly. It tells you right away we are not in for a simple good versus evil story. No way. We're stepping into a world where meaning itself is under attack. The old battle lines, order versus chaos, they've completely collapsed into something way more dangerous, where both sides end up serving the same empty master. So, let's set the scene. Our story kicks off at the base of this desolate mountain, and sitting there on a literal throne of ash are two incredibly powerful figures. And you can tell they are just deeply, deeply troubled by what's happening in the world. They're plotting against a new force, something they don't quite understand, but they know one thing for sure. It has to be stopped. So, who exactly are these two? Well, first you have the spirit of gravity. He is the embodiment of rigid tradition, that crushing weight of conformity. He's basically the voice in your head that always says, you must, or thou shalt. Then, on the other side, you've got the pale cynic. He's a whole different kind of threat. We're talking pure nihilism. He carries this white lantern that just bleaches all meaning and color from the world. Because to him, every belief, every passion, it's all just pointless in the end. And what could possibly bring these two forces together? Their shared enemy is a figure they call the jester. And the jester's transhuman dance? Well, that represents a radical, unpredictable kind of individuality and self-creation. This new energy is totally disrupting what they call the stable order of the marketplace, which is really their code for the predictable, controllable world that they rule over. The spirit of gravity's biggest fear revolves around the zeitgeist, the spirit of the age. He's terrified that the very pillars holding up society are starting to shatter. He's convinced the jester's influence is steering the world away from that shared, stable order and straight into a hurricane of fragmented, chaotic individualism. Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. This conflict, it's not happening on some physical battlefield. It is an internal war, a psychological struggle for the soul of every single individual. And the jester is right there, at the absolute center of the storm, trying to master these incredible forces from within. And to really get what this battle's about, we have to look at what the parable calls the internal bridges of the soul. You've got the animus, which is the assertive will, think of it like the engine, and then you have the anima, the receptive soul, which is more like the compass. The whole battleground is the delicate balance between these two. So the spirit of gravity's argument is that the jester is corrupting the animus. He thinks the jester's pride and this radical self-assertion are twisting our inner will into something dangerous and unstable. It's pulling people away from their proper, socially defined roles and, well, encouraging them to think for themselves. And at the very same time, the spirit is afraid that the anima is being drowned in violet smoke. He believes that our inner compass, that intuitive, receptive part of the soul, is getting totally lost in this haze of subjectivity, completely cut off from the solid ground of a shared reality. See, for the spirit of gravity, these powerful inner forces are not for you to go exploring with. No, they're meant to be heavy anchors. They're control mechanisms designed to bind every person to the collective, to guarantee stability and conformity, whatever the cost. They are there to keep the ship of society from drifting, not for charting some wild new course. But the pale cynic, he sees it totally differently. And he comes back with this absolutely crushing take. While the spirit is panicking about this dangerous flight of individuality, the cynic just sees a pathetic, flickering candle of meaning that's about to be snuffed out by the giant storm of a meaningless universe. To him, what the jester is trying to do, it is completely, utterly futile. So this shared hatred for what the jester represents, it pushes them from just talking about it to taking terrifying action. They forge what the parable calls an unholy alliance, and they combine their powers to create a weapon made for one purpose, to crush the individual spirit once and for all. And their goal is incredibly specific and, frankly, terrifying. They want to snuff out the potential of a new jester, a successor, before any new kind of social bond, a new way of being, can even form. They're trying to ground this flight of human potential before it even gets the chance to take off. And here is exactly how their plan works. It's a devastating 1-2 punch. First, the spirit of gravity brings out his heavy loom. Its job is to weave everyone's inner forces, that anima and animus, into a single, standardized, gray tapestry of absolute conformity. Then the cynic steps in with his bleaching fog, which erases every last trace of individual color and meaning, turning the whole thing a uniform, hollow white. And right here, this is the core conflict. The jester is trying to rewild the human soul, to set its natural forces free, to create something new and beautiful. But this unholy alliance, this combination of crushing order and absolute nihilism, it's the void's answer. It's an attempt to pave over that entire wilderness with cold, gray concrete. But just when their plan seems absolutely perfect, a complication pops up. An unexpected variable enters the machine, something that neither the Titan of Order nor the Master of Emptiness could have possibly predicted. There is a crack in their perfect, sterile void. You see, their perfectly controlled, meaningless world had a fundamental flaw. As that giant loom started its work, weaving its gray tapestry, it failed to account for an influence that plays by a completely different set of rules, a ghost in the machine. All of a sudden, the spectral thread of red and blue, colors of passion, of spirit, it just appears, snaking its way right through the heavy, leaden gears of the loom. This thread, it turns out, is the lingering influence of the original jester. It's a force so potent that not even the absolute order of the spirit or the absolute emptiness of the cynic can stop it. It is an echo of freedom that refuses to be silenced. And the result of this? It's profound. The zeitgeist itself, the spirit of the age, fractures right down the middle. Humanity is now being pulled between two totally opposite destinies. One path is sinking into lead, a future of heavy, predictable conformity. And the other is dissolving into light, a future of radical, maybe even chaotic, individual freedom. The world is literally being torn in two. And so, this brings us to the parable's climax. The board is set, all the pieces are moving, and the stage is now prepared for one final, decisive showdown for the future of the soul itself. But they're not giving up. The spirit and the cynic turn their combined power toward one last target, a place called the Oasis, where they sense the new jester is in a moment of weakness, and they get ready to launch their final, synchronized attack, unleashing the leaden threads and the silver mist. And this leaves us with the central, haunting question of the entire story. What happens to the individual soul when the two greatest threats to its existence, totalitarian control on one side and utter meaninglessness on the other, decide to team up? Can that fragile spark of self-creation possibly survive an assault like that? And the parable leaves us on this incredibly provocative note. It's become a desperate race against the weaving of the end. And it asks us a final, chilling question. In a world being pulled apart by these two extremes, is a future of silent, colorless conformity the only thing that's left? The answer, well, that's left for us to think about.